There's nowhere that I would rather be today. Welcome to our office in uptown Scottsdale. I'm Dr. Douglas Cowan. We provide the finest in neurofeedback and counseling services, and we do hope that you learn from and enjoy this video. And welcome back to my office. Here in this video, we're going to continue this series on the different types of ADHD. We are using 5 different types, the characters from Winnie the Pooh, to identify the different types of ADHD. We have Pooh Bear, Tigger, Piglet, Rabbit, and Eeyore. And each one has its own different personality differences, own different ways of just sort of approaching life and approaching the world. Today we're going to look at Piglet-style ADHD. And Piglet-style ADHD is ADHD combined with anxiety or worry or hypervigilance. And we're going to talk about this just real briefly today, because if this is the type of ADHD that your child, teenager, spouse, or yourself has, you can then target a very efficient treatment program for that particular type of ADHD. So let's just take a look at this real quickly. I got the information on my screen right over here, so that's why I'm looking at it. That Piglet is nervous, anxious, hypervigilant, as well as ADHD. Piglet's a great friend, absolutely loyal, but scares easily. And in just a minute, I'm going to show you why that is. Now remember, Piglet is that small, frail character from the 100-Acre Wood. Great friend, very loyal, but small. And so because he's small, he's worried, he's nervous, he's anxious, he startles easily. Sometimes he's so nervous that he just doesn't get stuff done. You know, he worries, he stutters sometimes. And so it is with some kids with ADHD, no doubt about it. In fact, some people estimate that between 20 and 25% of children and teenagers with ADHD have this type of ADHD, this sort of anxious, worried, limbic system is too aroused, too active type of ADHD. So let's talk in detail with it. This style of ADHD is very similar to the rabbit style that we talked about in a different video, except that in this Piglet style, the child's midbrain is so over-aroused that the child is hypervigilant, easily startled, maybe talks all the time, you know, like just chatters a lot, and may touch everything in the room, like just everything that's not moving, they're touching. And of course, that can be awful to take a child like that into a store with expensive items sitting on the shelf. So this child's nervous, worried, anxious, can have trouble shifting attention from one activity to another activity, and frequently gets stuck in loops of negative thoughts. So let me just explain those things. You know, neurologically, we normally have this flexibility where we can do one thing, and then if required, we can shift to another thing. We can focus on things inside of our heads, like we can think, we can imagine, we can dream, we can plan. These things are happening inside of our heads. We can figure stuff out, like we can do homework or taxes or shopping lists or whatever. We can do these things here, kind of inside of our head to a very small part of the world in front of us. But if something's happening behind us, we should be able to shift our attention to that as well. Take care of what's happening behind us, see what's going on, and then bring our attention back to what we're doing. And we may lose some time getting out of the groove, out of the zone on this particular task, getting into the groove, into the zone on that other task, and coming back. We may lose 5 minutes, 10 minutes in order to get back into that zone, but we can do it. And we can shift our attention from the inside world to the outside world many times a minute. In fact, we can do it a few times a second. But with some people with ADHD, they simply cannot do that. They can, but I mean, it's harder. So the shift from the inside world to the outside world, they're just not as flexible at doing that. And so this is where we start talking about kids who can be watching TV, watching a movie, playing a video game, and the house could burn down around them and they don't notice. It's because they get so locked in on something that they're doing, they just don't have the flexibility to easily see what else is going on. So this is a child who's doing whatever and he's really into it. He's really focused on it. And you ask him to stop what he's doing and take out the trash. It's unlikely that that is going to happen. So they have trouble shifting attention from one activity to another activity once they get going. The good news of this is if they get into doing their homework, let them roll. Let them ride it out until they're done with this. This is the good news. This is the businessman in the future that has his vision of a project and just works on it until he completes it. This is like the hunter kind of brain, that the village needed a deer and they sent that hunter out and he didn't come back until he had meat for everybody. So it's that kind of thing. They get very locked in on things. But if it's a negative thought that they get locked in on, that negative thought will just go on and on and on and on and on. And it's very difficult to get them out of this kind of loop of negative thinking once they are in it. They can get stuck in these loops of negative thoughts. Hey, let me show you a picture and sort of explain things a little bit better. So this is a picture of a brain with this type of ADHD. And what you'll notice in the electrical activity of this brain is that the limbic system is really fired up. Now, let's just sort of talk for a minute about what the limbic system is all about. You have the outer part of the brain, it's most of the brain. And then you have an inner structure of the brain, that a left side and a right side, that we'll call the limbic system, the midbrain. Our emotional brain is what it's often referred to. And there are 22 different structures in this part of the brain. There are short-term memory structures. There's a structure that will hold longer-term memories if they're associated with emotions. So this can be kind of traumatic kinds of memories. And it's right next to another part of the brain called the amygdala. And the hippocampus and the amygdala are the big players in the limbic system, and it's a system. It's a system of different structures interacting together. So the amygdala is sort of the warrior of the brain, the watchtower, the guy who's standing in the watchtower keeping watch, the guy who sounds the alarm when there's an alarm to sound. That's the amygdala is tasked with keeping us alive and protecting us. So among other things that it does. And if the hippocampus says, hey, I noticed something that the last time I noticed anything like this, it was bad, it tells the amygdala, I think there's something bad that might happen. And the amygdala then takes action. And it's the part of the brain that sends the signal to kick off the whole fight or flight system. We can drop adrenaline, we can drop cortisol, we can get spun up. But it's there to protect us for that. So let me give you another example to help explain this. I have a wonderful dog, Cubby the Wonder Dog, Golden Retriever. If you've owned a Golden Retriever, you know they're wonderful dogs. Whenever a client comes to my house, comes to my office, then Cubby will bark and will tell me there's somebody coming up the driveway coming to your office. Nobody sneaks up on me, Cubby barks. But as soon as they get over by my office, Cubby goes and lays down and goes to sleep. But there was a change in the environment that Cubby noticed. Cubby paid attention to it, warned me of it, went back to sleep. I have neighbors who have a dog. Every time they chain the dog up outside, that dog will bark for about 10 hours straight for no particular reason. It just barks all the time. And so it is with anxiety, that these structures in the middle part of the brain they have a job to do when there's something different in the environment, something changes. It's supposed to pay attention to that change and decide, is this something good or something bad? Will this thing eat me or will I eat it? It pays attention to stuff, changes in the environment. But when that system is on all the time for no particular reason, then there are other changes that take place in the brain, and we get more anxiety, We can be more worried all the time. We can be easily startled by things, hyper vigilant, always scanning the environment as if something bad is about to pop out at us any second. We can get caught in these loops of negative thought, and so on. And so you see in this picture here, here's this type of ADHD brain, still problems in the front part of the brain, still underactivity in the front part of the brain, but we wanted to show you this picture with the limbic system all lit up to sort of illustrate the point. So as we mentioned earlier, 20 to 25% of all kids with ADHD may have this profile. And so these are the kids, they're easily startled, they can be kind of dramatic about things, always wanting to touch stuff. These are the Jimmy, put your hands in your pocket kinds of kids. And yet they can be, they're really terrific kids. They can be loyal and very kind. They're just kind of spun up. And so that's it. That's the limbic system is overactive. And so treatment not only needs to focus on the front part of the brain and the executive functions, the working memory, but also on calming down that middle part of the brain of ADHD. Also, neurofeedback is very good because at least the high performance neurofeedback that I use, or low energy neurofeedback from the Len Oak School of Neurofeedback, this can be very, very fast at calming down the limbic system. We see really great results with that. It's a little bit slower at getting the frontal lobes to behave more normally under a workload, but it works very fast at calming down the limbic system. So there's some ideas for you, and if this is what's going on inside your house, hey, again, fight the good fight. You can do this. There are some things that can really, really help to calm down the limbic system and then help your child to just sort of dial in and focus and get done what he needs to get done.